When it comes to decluttering, there are certain things in life that are complete no-brainers. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the 10 things we think you will never use and can be decluttered today.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here are your hosts, Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Leslie.
If you're new to the Declutter Hub podcast, you're so welcome here. What you'll find is here reality, empathy, and advice by the bucket load. And we just wanted to remind everyone about our show notes page that you can find on declutterhub.com/213. You can watch the podcast there on YouTube and you can find all our useful links. And most importantly, you will find a subscribe button to follow our show so it pops into your notifications each Friday.
How much fun is that, the show notes, Ingrid? And how much fun is it to talk about 10 no-brainers? It was not difficult to come up with this list, let's face it. We literally, we always prep our podcast, don't we, with some basic info. And this was a quick fire 10-minute prep, wasn't it? Because there are tons of no-brainers, but we've chosen some gems, hopefully, for you today.
I hope so too. And some of them take up lots of space, while others are really small. But it doesn't matter because you know they are there. In your mind somewhere, you're like, yep, I've got this in my house.
I'd like to see how many. I want people to actually pop onto the show notes, put a comment on and tell us how many out of 10 things people have got and see if anybody's got all 10. That would be a good test, wouldn't it?
Yes, or leave a comment in your podcast player. I would love to know this. Or go to the show notes and leave us a comment and say, I actually have only one, and be really smug about yourself. Or maybe, I've got all 10. Hands up, I am the one.
But the problem is, if people have been listening to us for 212 podcasts and this is their 213th, and they've still got 10 out of 10 things that we consider to be no-brainers, maybe we are not having the impact that we should, Ingrid, as declutterers.
Well, Leslie, but maybe this is the first time they're listening in. So they're like, huh? What? Podcast episode 213? What are you talking about? Where have you been in my life? For this how long?
Where have you been all my life? I know. Anyway, without further ado, we need to get cracking. So let's go for a number one on our list.
Yes, I'm sure lots of people have this, Leslie. I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but I think something we just put in a drawer and think, we're going to deal with it sometime. It's old phones. I mean, old technology, but old phones specifically. How often do we swap phones these days? It's like crazy. And then the old one, we're not completely sure yet. And we're not sure if we transferred all the information and maybe the battery is dead and we can't charge it anymore. Or the screen's cracked and we think, this could be used by somebody else, but I need to do something else to get this repaired. It's not one of my favorite things to do, Leslie. You can probably hear me sighing. This is like I'm going to ask my husband to do this.
I think the problem is that we're firmly focused on the new phone, the all singing, all dancing phone. And what we don't do is want to worry about taking care of the old one. So we chuck it in a drawer, as you say, and we never get to it. And then by the time we do get to it, which might be several years later, it's kind of not very useful to anybody because it's really, really, really old technology. Mm-hmm. So we're going to urge you to declutter and discard or donate those old phones now because they kind of used to someone else. You might be able to get some money for them, which is also really important. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget also, Ingrid, landline phones. There are so many people these days that are taking landlines completely out of the house. I've not got a landline in my house at all. And so you can let it go. You can let the landline phones go as well. So it's not just mobile phones that we're talking about. One little caveat, I think, which I think a lot of people do want to keep, is if you've got the very first mobile phone that you ever owned, that tends to have sentimental value. So sometimes old phones do have a little bit of sentimental value attached to them as well. So, but there's a lot of phones over our lives. Sadly, we move
Yeah.
through phones at a rate of knots. And so, I mean, I must have had, I don't know, 20 phones. What would your guess be? 10, 15, maybe?
Yeah,
I'm
I would
quite
say
old.
so.
I'm quite old.
I remember my first phone. I don't remember a lot of the phones in between, but my first phone was like a fridge in a bright yellow cover.
Nice, nice, nice. So, yes, number one on our list, do discard those old phones that are sitting, languishing in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I've got another really good number two, Leslie. I mean, we've gone like all out here, I think, because it is incomplete board games and puzzles. I mean, how frustrating when you're playing, where you're actually putting 1,000 piece puzzle together and you find out you're missing one or two pieces. It's like, you just don't want that. Or if you're playing a board game and you're suddenly realizing, actually, whether it's Monopoly or something else, I'm missing like a couple of counters, or I'm missing a couple of the cards, or one of the streets is missing on Monopoly, or half of the money seems to have disappeared. You can't then play it properly. It's really annoying.
The problem is that you don't know that it's incomplete until you play it.
Yes.
This is the thing. But what we need to do is, when we realize it's incomplete, know that it's not fit for purpose. And that's the thing. Because what we will do is we will get it out, set it up, and then think that's not complete, and then put it back. So what we need to do is discard it, or try and, I'm pretty sure you can find these things on eBay. I bet you can find missing pieces on it. Ingrid's chomping at the bit to say someone, because she's an absolute board game fanatic.
Yeah. We love it. We love it in our house. And I'll tell you, we play Rummy Cup like fanatical. We love it. Like at family gatherings on holiday, Rummy Cup is the thing. It's got the stones with the number. So we were missing the black 2. So for ages, there was a paper folded up which says black 2, which of course everybody knew it was the black 2. And at one point it's like, this is like crazy. I'm going to see if I can find on eBay a black number 2 Rummy Cup piece. And I did. And it looked completely the same until it arrived, and it's just that little bit different because, of course, it's not from the original set. So now still everybody knows it's the black 2, but it's working. So
yes,
I've made it complete again, which made me insanely happy because board games are expensive. And I just don't like wasting things. As you know, I rather try and make do and mend. That's kind of my thing. So I was like, if I can get a Rummy Cup stone for like a couple of pounds, I'm going to do it. So yeah, but we still know it's the black 2. But never mind. If you can do it with a puzzle of 1,000 pieces, I think it's a little bit more tricky.
I know, exactly. You've kind of got to do the thing to know that it's not working as a thing, don't you?
Yeah.
That's the thing. But we do believe in complete board games and puzzles, unless you can find those missing pieces and jigsaws. Let me face it, you're not going to be able to find the jigsaw piece, are you? So if you know that it's incomplete, it needs to go, sadly, doesn't it?
Well, let's move on to number 3, one of your favorites. We've talked about it a lot, haven't we, Leslie? So let's keep it short because I think our listeners know this.
Yes. Appliance boxes. It's like the bane of my life. They are huge, they are cumbersome, they are everywhere, and they are kept in lofts, garages, sheds, and basements for a rainy day because everybody thinks that you need appliance boxes, and then everyone will go, but they're really useful when you move, but you need them if you take them back to the shop. And that is potentially true. Of course, it might be useful to have them, but you have to look at the compromise here. So what do you want? Do you want that huge box that is stopping you from doing something else in that room, or that is cluttering up your space? And you might be willing to forfeit the fact that actually you're going to have to box it up in a different way if you take it back to a shop. The shops are not going to expect the box when it's returned. Maybe for a couple of weeks afterwards to make sure you get it out of the box, that it's actually working. But after that point, it's time for it to go. Don't keep these appliance boxes forever.
Definitely. Good one, Leslie. Good one. Let's move on to number 4 then. We're going back to technology. It's the wires, the cords, the spaghetti that is in drawers that nobody knows what it is for. It might even be like a broken extension cord for all we know. I mean, it's just tangled mess and oh, it's one of my least favorite things to do. When I love decluttering, I mean, you can throw
Yeah.
anything at me, but cord spaghetti is like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. But there are definitely, I think that if you get the whole family involved, if there's more than you at home, you can quite quickly work out what things are for, because some people have more line of sight than others, don't they? Some people remember that was their old laptop cable, or you can have the conversation and say, has anybody got a Lenovo laptop anymore, or whatever? And then all of a sudden people are like, no, that one went 3 years ago or whatever. And so you can get through these things quite quickly.
Yeah.
So obsolete cords, albeit a kind of annoying process to go through, it takes down that cord spaghetti, allows you then to label what things are and to get them back into control.
Yeah.
If there's something that you need to get in control that is cords, it's really important for you to know what these cords are for. So if you can get in the habit of putting labels on them as soon as they come in, that's super useful. But like, have I done that? No. Have you done that, Ingrid?
On a couple, because I was like, okay, I need to know what my laptop charger is. I need to know what my mobile phone charger is, so nobody takes it. It's like mobile, Ingrid.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things, but not every cord in this house is labeled. But I've got a husband and a son who are both quite like on it with stuff like that, and they can tell me, I'm like, oh, what's this? And they're like, yeah, that's this, and I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So. Yeah, I have help. I have definitely help here.
Okay. So let's go on to number 5. Another one of my kind of bugbears, I'm not going to lie, Ingrid, and that is curtains that you have already taken down and replaced with a new set of curtains. Yeah?
Yes. And they're big. They're gigantic. You find these lumps of fabric and you're like, what's this?
Yes, exactly. They take up loads of space. They're quite often dusty. They're quite often a little bit old and tatty. But because typically curtains cost a lot of money, we feel obliged to keep them, and we keep them longer than we need. And we think, oh, we might put them up at a different window, or they might come in for somewhere else or something like that. The chances are they never will. And the reason why we can say this with sort of certainty, with clarity, is that we've seen these curtains so often sitting in lofts, basements and sheds at clients' homes, and people go, why have I kept those for the past 7 years thinking that I'm going to put them up? You've made a conscious decision that you don't want them in your house anymore, that you wanted to replace them. So it's time for them to go, hopefully off to a new person that can use them. And the longer that they sit languishing in your house, the less desirable they're going to be to someone else. So old curtains that you have taken down is our number 5 of no-brainers that you can get rid of today.
Yes, and charity shops, Freegal, Freecycle, if they're not absolutely falling apart at the seams, you can definitely try and give them away. If otherwise, you can always donate them to the charity shop as rags. Don't throw them in landfill, because it is fabric that can be reused for something. But yes, I'm with you, Leslie. Old curtains can go. So let's take a break and let's continue with our 10 things you can easily let go of, but you're holding on to them and nobody knows why.
Is that the title? You're just making that, you just literally made that title. That is not the title of the podcast. I'm like, what are you talking about? You just made that up.
I just made it up.
Again, try with the proper title of the podcast.
We're going to continue with 10 things you're holding on to you will never use after the break.
I can't actually believe we're talking about this, but the best festive periods are the ones carefully planned and thought about. Presents, cards, wrapping, food, drink, decorations, and preparing yourself and your space all need to be thought about. And the secret to success is planning early. The good news is we have our countdown to Christmas just for you, and we have slashed the price of it to just $19. 6 sessions of video guidance from Ingrid and I will ensure you will have your most organized festive season ever. Go to declutterhub.com/countdown for more information.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to your 10 things you're holding on to you, but you will never use podcast. And we have just discussed the first 5 and it's a 10 things. So let's go on to number 6, which is old pillows. We hold on to old pillows. We buy new ones because they've kind of gotten completely like flat and a bit yellowy. Let's be honest. I mean, it's a bit manky, isn't it? But we think, oh, but maybe I'm gonna have somebody staying over, or maybe I don't like the new pillow. But then we do like it, but we forget we kept the old one in our drawer or cupboard somewhere. And then when you do a bit of decluttering, you're like, ooh, what's this manky yellow old pillow doing here? Yes, it can go. You've got our permission.
You can see our face. Anybody who's watching on YouTube, you can see our kind of faces of disdain because we've seen these yellow pillows everywhere, and we're like, ooh. Do you know what I mean? There's something about the passage of time as well. You know, when they're on your bed and got a pillowcase, you kind of let it go. But once you take them out, and they just look worse, don't they? Somehow. But yeah, it's time for them to go. The sad thing about pillows, the really, really hard thing about pillows, and the reason why people keep hold of them is because you can't easily donate them.
Yeah.
Or you can't donate them at all. The only places that you've got a chance of donating them to, really, the general donation. I'm not saying there are not specialist things that you can, but typically are animal shelters, but they tend to then be overrun with these things because everyone wants to donate their pillows to them. So that's, there's a barrier, there's a psychological barrier in there which stops us from donating old pillows. But sometimes we've got to just bite the bullet, and there are things in our decluttering life that we have to put into landfill. But as long as we are conscious about what we're doing and we try our absolute best, then some things sadly are just going to have to happen in that way, aren't they? And we have to kind of move forward with it and get it out of our homes. So old pillows, number 6. What do you think, Ingrid?
Yeah, I think, we're so about recycling here and donating and giving away and all of those things that it hurts us to throw something away. But sometimes it's just the only way, and you have to choose yourself and your space over, not throwing something in landfill, and I think that's a hard message sometimes, but we have to choose ourselves, and we do the best all of us are doing the best we can, and we always try to do a little bit more, and we talk about it a lot here, and I think it's so important, and that's why we talk about Free Cycle and Freegal and charities and all of those things a lot, because we care about the environment, and we want, for you to give you all these options out there that you can donate it, but sometimes it's just not possible, and then you have to choose yourselves, and that's okay. So okay, let's move on to number 7 then, Leslie.
It's another big one actually, Ingrid, isn't it? And this is one that I bet you bottom dollar loads of people have got this in there,
especially here in the UK.
Exactly. Because we do love a cup of tea, don't we, here in the UK? And we typically do that through a kettle. And what we do is, because we put our kettles on all day long in the UK, we love our cups of tea. We have kettles, and we replace them as well when we want a new kettle. But there's just something about a kettle that makes us go, well, I just put the old one in the garage because it's actually still working and it's fine. And I might use it. And what happens if my kettle breaks, my new kettle breaks, I need to have one, because how could I possibly do 3 hours till I go to the local Tesco to buy a new one? How can I possibly do without my kettle? It would be catastrophic. I'm going to keep it in the garage. And it's not just kettles, it's toasters, it's any kind of old electrical appliances. We see it all the time, don't we? We're like, you decided you wanted a new one, so you need to go, unless it's a very good reason. Of course, sometimes, I kept a kettle here for ages because it was a good kettle, but I got one of those cooker taps, those hot water taps. So I did have a really good kettle, and I knew that would come in for my son at university. And so I did keep it here for a while, but I had a purpose. I was intentionally keeping that because I knew that it was going to go to a good home in a few months. So I had to keep it. But really think about all those appliances that you have got languishing in your basements, lofts and sheds, and see whether you really, really need them.
I know. I mean, the cup of tea has a whole life of its own in this country. Let me tell you. I mean, the things you see as well over the summer always is people's like, oh, I can't wait to come back from holiday and have a home brew. It's like, the first thing I'm going to do when I get home is have a proper cup of tea. And I'm like, okay. It makes me laugh.
We love that. But to be fair, you like a cup of tea as well every afternoon. So I don't know why you're saying it about Brits. You're Dutch and you like your tea just as much as the best of them.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have like 12 cups of tea. I don't have 12 cups of tea every day.
Okay. We do like our tea here in the UK. But anyway, so number 7. Do discard those kettles or old kitchen appliances that you have replaced.
Yeah, they can go, and they can be sent to the recycling center because they can use all the stuff to build other things. So
Or
yeah,
donate it. Like if it's still in working order, donate it. You can definitely go free cycle oleo, or
yeah,
you can sell it maybe even if it's a good quality kettle.
yeah.
So it's different things that you can do. So
Definitely. Right, let's go on to number 8, Leslie. Notebooks that are the wrong size. Now, we did a whole podcast about notebooks. So if you want to know, even you want to delve deep in your notebook situation, I can definitely recommend listening to that podcast, and we'll put it in the show notes. So look on declutterhub.com/213, and I'll put a link to that podcast in. But there are notebooks and notebooks, and we get given a lot of notebooks. We buy notebooks, we pick them up at work or a conference or wherever. They come into our lives, but we like a certain notebook, and that's either with lines, without lines, with graphic paper, with a ring or not a ring, different sizes. So discard all the ones that are the wrong size, because they're going to end up cluttering up your cupboard. You're not going to use them because you're always going to go back to your favorite notebook.
yeah, definitely. And so if you do have a notebook that you know is not one of your favorite types, the chances are it's just going to sit there and sit there and sit there and never get used, because you're always going to replenish your favorite type. And so it's really important to let those go. You know, if it's paper that's come from a conference, it's a very cheap notebook, it can just go straight away into recycling. If it's something that's a little bit nicer, then it can go straight to the charity shop, because let me tell you, in the same way that you do, people love a notebook and will lap those up. But there's no point in keeping notebooks that are the wrong size for you, and we see it all the time. People regularly have hundreds of spare notebooks, don't they, Ingrid? And that is no word of a lie. So if you are in the hundreds of notebooks category, you definitely need to listen to the podcast that's in the show notes, because that will make you sit up and think a little bit about them.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's go on to number 9. Oh, I like this one, Leslie. Keys you have no idea what they're for. We find boxes of them, whole baskets, random piles stuffed somewhere. You're like, what's this? Oh, those are keys. What are they for? I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. But you do have to do your due diligence.
Yes.
You know, so you can't just willy-nilly go, don't know what that's for, just going to chuck it in the bin. That's not useful. So before you randomly start throwing away keys that you don't know what they're for, do try and think about the keys that you might have. Have you got keys from work? Have you got keys from somebody's house that they've asked you to look after? Have you got, how many keys have you got? Back door, front door, shed keys, blah, 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 in your house. Really do your due diligence and try these keys out and start to put some labels on them. So if they're not often used keys, what's that? Is that right? Seldom used keys. Then do label them so you've got an idea of what they're for, because we do have like odd things, don't we, for like little cabinet, antique cabinets or suitcases sometimes, or things like that. And we really need to know what they're for so that they are at hand when we need them.
Yeah, we've got keys for because we got like a bike rack for our car, and there's kind of this special fiddly sets of keys that we've got for that. So, we've got it labeled bikes, because otherwise, or we've got a lot of bikes in this house because of course I'm Dutch. So we've got a lot of bike locks. So there you go. So we've got keys for that as well in a drawer somewhere, and then labeled for which lock they go with, because otherwise you just never know. And I actually helped one of my clients once when we found loads of keys, and we actually walked around her whole house and tried on all the keys, and we actually figured it all out. And we only had like a couple of random ones left, and we said, okay, let's keep those to the side now, but in a year's time, if they still are not used, then we can let them go. But if you've honestly got piles of keys, it is a fiddly job, but very satisfying.
Very satisfying. Very satisfying. Yes, exactly. So key audit required.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. That's good.
Key audit.
Key audit. Yes. Oh, tell us, listeners, tell us in the comments in the show notes. We would love to know. Are you going to do a key audit?
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing. Everybody else would be like, that sounds horrific. And we're like, how satisfying would that be to label keys and check keys and see what you've got and discard keys that you don't need? That's the kind of thing that would make us very excited.
Yeah.
And we hope that it makes you excited too when you do your key audit.
Yes. Oh, it's true. Oh my gosh, Leslie, number 10 now. Let's do number 10. It's the last one of this podcast.
Yes, number 10 is shoes that give you blisters. If those shoes give you blisters, they're always going to give you blisters. Do you know what I mean? Something that's not miraculously going to happen to those shoes, which is going to mean that they're going to stop giving you blisters. Now, there are also, if they're brand new shoes and they need to be broken in a little bit, that's the exception that proves the rule, of course. But if you've had them for a while and they continue to pinch you, to give you blisters, to rub, to hurt, too small, too big, all of those things, then let them go, because they're not serving you well and they're just causing you problems that you don't need. Nobody needs to be hobbling around in their life, do they?
No, I'm gonna come clean. I've got two pairs of shoes on the radar that I've clung on to because they're really nice, but I think I'm gonna have to kind of go, yeah, that was a mistake purchase. Can't do this one, can't walk in it, too much, too big.
Me and my friend, actually, we've got this thing where we call it summer feet. You know, at the beginning of summer season, when you go from like wearing trainers or boots and socks and all that, and then you start suddenly wearing sandals or open toe shoes or flip flops, and you have summer feet because your feet are not kind of tuned into hardcore kind of bare feet walking, are they? And so there are summer feet. So you need to go through the summer feet phase as well, where you kind of just toughen up your feet skin. Is that a word? so there are some exceptions, of course. We're not saying just chuck everything out. If it comes to be, in June and all of a sudden you wear your sandals for the first time, you get a little blister, give it a little bit more time. But if it's a repeated thing that's happened, then it's time for those shoes to go. I feel very strongly about it. I think I've got the worst feet in the world.
Oh.
Maybe I'm exaggerating. I think I'm probably exaggerating, actually. I'm sure there are people with worse feet than me, but I do get blisters all the time, and it causes real problems with my husband, who moans he moans at me moaning all the time about my blistered feet. Oh. And I've got plantar fasciitis as well, which I've had for 9 months. And so those two things combined, the blisters and the plantar fasciitis, don't lead to a great experience when we're out walking. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Leslie, I'm sorry to hear about your horrible feet, because it's just terrible if you can't, walk properly, because it's really annoying. So yes, shoes that give you blisters are definitely on the list to let go. So listeners, this was our 10 things you're holding on to you will never use. So let us know in the show notes. We would love to know about your key audit, your summer feet, your wrong size notebooks, your dead phones. Tell us. We'd love to know. declutterhub.com/213. Now, next week, we are preparing for the festive period. So we're looking forward to seeing you then.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.